All right, good morning, you guys. Doing a little adjustment there to make sure that we can be live together this morning. A little technical stuff going on. And had to adjust a few things, of course, because you are here on November 12th, 2023. On the rainy Sunday show, right? It's been raining for days and apparently it cleared up on this morning. We're here on the rainy Sunday show because the name of this show came from the fact when I was a little kid and it would be raining outside. It always felt like it was on Sunday. That's when I would get a stack of the stepdad's, uncle's comics, maybe mine, and I'd crawl up on the bed, listen to the rain hitting the rooftop, and would escape into some Kirby Crackle, if you will, back then, right? We got lots of people here, which is great to see. Thanks for joining me. Um, and the update here is the room continues with the rearranging and the storing and stuff like that, and maybe we're going to be getting some things on the walls, going a little slow here and stuff, right? So everybody, that's good morning, guys. See who all is here, man. Comic Crack up bright and early. Glad to see you, brother. Comics Unlimited, great to see you as well. Comic collector, fantastic. Easy comic reader, smoothest man that has eased on in here in the morning. And of course, we got the Eric Breen. All right, Eric Breen, the Dean Martin of the comic book community, in my opinion, the way that he just smoothly floats around and he's just that smooth, man, a rat packer, if you will, of Flint's in Fred Flintstone lookalike. So great to see you, brother. Good to see everybody. All right. So, and yes, I did lick coffee off my hand there because I'm a savage. Anyway, I'm assuming you can hear me loud and clear. I'm assuming all the technical problems are through, and we are going to talk a little bit about things, right? So, subscribe, all that stuff. Hit the bell. I'm wondering where John C is this morning. John C, if you pop up a little bit later, I'm not going to give you detention, man. We all have days where we're late. Okay. And Eric Breen has now, you know what? This could be a four horseman moment. You could have just Arn Anderson, the whole group, man. He went from Rat Pack more like the Pack Rats, right? That sounds even cooler, right? Pack Rat was one of my favorite members of Atari Force, even. There you go. All right. I feel like we're in some unofficial club now, right? So basically, I'm gonna get it out of the way. Things have gotten trendy, right? It is now. I'm gonna show some books. I've got a great stack of books. We're gonna do some retro reviews. Uh, get used to this new camera angle. Do all this stuff. I got a few things to talk about. Some old stuff, some new stuff, some stuff where you're going to be like, "You're crazy, Tim." I thought you knew what you were talking about. I thought you read comics before. And some things where I'm like, yeah, this is good stuff. This is good stuff. But one of the things I was going to talk about was like the Miss Marvel thing, right? The Miss Marvel, Captain Marvel, Photon, all of that. The Marvels movie, right? And then I saw that it was like all over YouTube. Everything was all over YouTube. I was sort of interested in the box office because I would like to have better movies, better things, and stuff like that. And I hate when things end up getting trendy, right? I've been on YouTube a long time, right? I remember skeptic channels. Skeptic channels moved on up and sort of became Comicsgate when it got mixed up with things, right? 2016, I called a bunch of stuff out. And then for like the last 7 or 8 years and stuff, you had all these channels that were like anti this and going after that and everything, right? And then you had the defenders of the MCU, the MCU fans, the ones that were still watching the Phase 4 stuff and everything like that, got as bad as Swifties, is my opinion when it comes to fandom and stuff, right? Like that. And then all of a sudden, South Park Pandaverse comes on. I watched South Park Pandaverse. I tell you, it's worth to get if you don't have Paramount Plus to watch South Park the Pandaverse, it is worth either that. Free trial or maybe pay for a month because I thought it was fantastic. And if you follow a lot of these channels on YouTube, you can tell that Parker and Stone are definitely watching them and stuff, right? But then all of a sudden, it was like they made it okay for everybody to start going after Disney and Star Wars and stuff. When after people were doing it anyway here on YouTube, but out in the real world and stuff, people were still all the buzzwords. They were shilling and stuff like that, right? So what I was going to mention is that MCU movies have been dead with my friends for a while, but it's worse than being dead. It's indifferent, apathetic. Uh, I did get a few, and here's why I was going to bring it up. I did get some messages where the few of my friends in real life who sort of are like, hey, I kind of like this movie and it's not that bad. My wife likes it and we get to go and all that stuff. Well, I got messages where their wives wanted to walk out. They wanted to walk out. I know about 3 or 4 people who went and saw these movies. They're not aware of all the stuff that goes on YouTube and stuff, and they were walking out. They 1 or 2 of them had to actually hold their wife. They just went ahead and just, no, we'll watch this and stuff. So I haven't talked to them in real life. I hope to have dinner with them over the next few weeks or something, or maybe hang out with everybody and find out what the hell was going on, what happened in that movie where even the wives were like, this is horrible and stuff, right? So I thought that was hilarious, right? So then I get on, I want to see what the box office is, just out of like morbid curiosity. I mean, I'm totally on it, owning it, no big deal and stuff like that. And as of the moment, probably like 9 this morning, Box Office Mojo, which I do trust, I don't think they updated anything since yesterday, and it was showing 43 million for an opening weekend. And if you know Marvel movies, that's horrible. So I don't know what the updated is for today on Sunday. So it just sort of amazed me where I'm like, wow. Okay, so then I looked on YouTube, right? I was going to see if there's any more reviews or something I was kind of curious about. And oh my God, everybody, channels I never even heard of, were popping up, and I saw a minimum of 1,000 views. And apparently, if you follow algorithms and stuff on YouTube, or you want to go for clicks and stuff, it is now official. After all these people like saying horrible things about like Nerdrotic and who are these, like Ryan Kennel and Geeks and Gamers, and be honest with you, there's a lot of those channels I don't like nor watch. But it's nothing personal. Now it's like everybody's jumped on board. So that's when I think things are officially dead, is when they become trendy. You know what I mean? When I'm like, it's the trendy thing to do. I like the things that are sort of like alternative or over here ahead of the game, not mainstream. And there's a place for that stuff. And if you're into that stuff, that's cool. But when it becomes the thing, when it is now the thing to do, it's time to move on and find something out, try to get ahead of the ball, or do something more honest and stuff, right? So we've given everybody plenty of time to show up here and join us on this Sunday morning. I know I've started out a little bit later, and we're going to talk about some things I'm reading. I hope you stick around because this is going to be comic book talk. Sorry, there's not going to be a lot of speculation and stuff here and stuff. I want to show you what I've been reading, what I've been checking out, what I've been catching up on and stuff, right? So I was going to save this for last, right? I was going to save this for last, but there's been a lot of people, as I mentioned this or talk about it stuff, that were like, that's the only comic book I read when I was a kid, or there's people that had fond memories of it, or there's people that are telling me that like it's the first 12 issues out of everything that you just need to read, and it was gold when I was a kid and stuff, right? So I stopped and I read this, and if you followed me in the channel and stuff, you know that I've like fallen backwards into a full run except for issue number 6, and I will not be getting the 2 annuals, even though Steve Ditko drew them and stuff, right? But we're talking about Bill Mantlo and get used to the new camera angle. Bill Mantlo, Mike Golden's 1979, some would say classic, Micronauts, right? And yes, I've done a little bit of research. I remember people talking about this over the years, so I've kind of pieced together things. There's not like a big history here that I'm aware of that is probably out there. And I like to point out the issues that I'm actually reading, just to save my mint or near mint copies, is probably about 2010. I got ripped off by a comic book shop, if you will, where 2011 or 12, excuse me, 2011 or 12. I remember where I was moving, right? But I found like probably like the first, like I said, except for issue 6 in whatever the first appearance of Captain Universe is, 10 issues of the first 12. Guy charged me $20, and then when I got home and unbagged them and stuff, they were tore all to crap. These were in the bottoms of someone's toy box, right? So I was sort of disgusted, right? But anyway, I've gone back and I've read. I think I'm up to issue. I'm getting ready to start the one with Man Thing. Let's take a look here. Where am I at in this? Yeah, I'm up to issue 7. So I read the first 5 issues because number 6 is the only one I don't have. And I tell you what, I want you to prepare yourself if you're a fan of this, right? Because I am going to finish reading the series. I want to hang in there, right? But I also get why this is beloved, right? So basically, Micronauts, before Star Wars, right before Star Wars, a comic book company turned left when they should have went right and jumped on the George Lucas properties for Star Wars. They went with Micronauts, Japanese toys. We had Shogun Warriors back then, little metal toys, right? I had Raiden, the Shogun Warrior, right? I watched anime whenever I could find it on anything that was on there. I totally loved the giant robots. I loved the fighter pilot aspect. Battle of the Planets is where I started, if you will, sir. At the same time that I discovered Johnny Quest, right? So I had one friend who literally lived over a hill. When I say he lived over a hill, I mean you went up the hill down into another neighborhood, and his house was at the bottom of the hill. My trailer was at the bottom of the other side of the hill. His name was Sam Jones. So I went over there and I never got to play with his Micronaut toys and stuff. He had everything in these little like plastic cabinets, like you would see in a kindergarten class or something like that. His house, it was fantastic, man. I mean, I don't know how more traditional you can get. His room was in the attic. It was A-frame. He had the posters on the wall. He had Kiss records. He had the posters from the Kiss records. He had all kinds of stuff. And then he had his little Micronaut toys and Raiden toys and things like that. Shogun Raider toys. And then he, like I said, he had the Micronauts. He's the only person I knew that had those. The alien Micronauts were my favorite. The time traveler kind of confused me. I didn't understand the story behind this, but he loved them. That's why you couldn't touch them. So anyway, the comic book had come out, and I was into Legion of Superheroes and Silver Age Marvel and things like that, right? So I didn't really see this. I didn't really see people talk about it. So around the '90s, I started hearing people talk about this series. Mike Golden was this, Mike Golden was that, and they missed the Micronauts. I start kind of looking around for these books, and our dealers would see me pull some out, and they were like, "That's the only comic book I read when I was a kid." So this came out in 1979. So I finally sat down and I read these in a great in one great setting there, right? The first 5 or 6, and I get it. So from what I understand, the first 12 issues are the stuff you want to get because it became a hit. It was a huge hit, and they had to continue it, but I can already tell editorial was coming in there and messing with things. As I read, I'll probably have more to say about that, but I can already tell that from the first issue to the fifth issue, people were tweaking things. And I actually hate to say this, I think it was for the better, maybe not for the art, but for the story. Because the first issue, I'm like, what the hell is going on? It is not clear on what the plot is and what's going on, and these characters are getting dumped. Captain Rand, Marionette, and is Bug on here? Bug right here are the Marvel characters that are owned by Marvel, created by Bill Mantlo, and I'm going to assume Mike Golden for the series, and the rest of them are the toys. Now that's got to be so cool. I remember Mike Golden doing the GI Joe yearbooks and stuff, and I was all over him. So I'm feeling that kind of magic for this, just because of my age. Those are fantastic. He drew the toys like they're the toys. He drew the characters with emotion. It was fantastic, right? One of my favorite comics I read as a kid with great memories and stuff, right? So I totally get being a young, a guy in 1979, a very forgotten golden age. 79 to 81, I think, is very forgotten when it comes to that little era when American Bandstand was like having its last few years of being cool on Saturday afternoons. Anyway, so you get in there and you're like, they just dumped the characters. Captain Rand's been suspended in summation for 1,000 years because he's an astronaut, and the acro years were flying around. And we got Baron here. He's a great scientist who Captain Rand knew or sort of knew. Did he know? We don't know if he knew him. Who found immortality by replacing body parts and body farming people and stuff. Now that's pretty heavy, right? But it's not clear. You can't really understand if you go straight forward to it. But then I remembered something. I meant to look it up, but if you watch this channel, I think you remember me finding a 1968, I think, issue of Batman that was double sized, right? And for years, I had a coverless copy from the stepdad's collection where it was the Clayface. It was the origin of the Clayfaces and stuff. I fell in love with it because they showed a cave, and I was just fascinated with caves as a kid. This is around the same time that this came out. And for years, I was like, what is that? So I would look for annuals and specials and spectacular issues because on the top of the pages of this coverless comic book, it said Batman Spectacular. It turns out it was an actual issue of Batman. I found it a few years ago and I went and read it, and it was amazing to read a book that I had not touched in 40 years or more, or whatever it was, 1978 to 2020 or whenever I found it, right? And there's that cave that I was so fascinated with, and the story that was so rich. My young mind filled in the gaps between the gutter of those two panels, to where the whole cave scene took place in two panels at the bottom of a page. But my childlike mind filled it in, so I think that's what happened. The first issue is just not clear what's going on. Everybody's dumped. It's chaotic. Mike Golden's art is so ahead of its time that this newsprint cannot contain it. I think that's the biggest crime of this is that I get it. I get why people are big. I'm a Mike Plough guy. I'm not a Mike Golden guy, but I can look at Mike Golden stuff and be like, wow. You know what I mean? It still blows me away. I get it. Um, so first issue wise, I was just sort of like, I don't know what the hell's going on. I don't know the motivation. He's 1,000-year-old. You're telling me in 1,000 years this microverse never changed, no cultural change, or it was just, I was like, what is going on? Then they just move on, so it doesn't really matter. They throw it out. It's like a Mel Brooks movie. You sort of get Mel Brooks. You get the plot of the movie in 5 minutes. The first 5 minutes of a Mel Brooks movie, you have the plot. This one, sort of, kind of, maybe, whatever. And then the first thing to do is they dump them into the macroverse, which is our world. And they're in Florida, and there's a kid mowing his yard wearing a pair of cutoff jeans, and he's skinny and he's got his tennis shoes on. And I'm like, oh my God, they're in the real world. This 1979. And this is where the nostalgic hit. Because in my mind, my little mind, I stayed outside all the time. Stepdad was a rough guy. You stayed outside to stay away from him, and you just forgot about him. And I had a great time outside, right? It was big wheels, two bikes. It was collecting bottles to go get some change for him, hitting a little mom and pop store, getting candy, pinball machines. And I've told the story many times, kiss cards, wacky packs, just whatever, eating candy, having a good time and stuff, right? And then also that's what it felt like. When I think of the 70s, you're out from the morning all the way up until night where you're catching lightning bugs, right? And the skies seemed bluer, the air felt cleaner, and the world felt quieter and brighter and stuff like that. So I've started getting it. So all of a sudden they're drawn in the same, uh, not exactly. I think they're a little bit bigger. Not that that matters, but of course, being a kid and seeing your Micronauts, they are drawn as the same size as toys compared to what's going on in them. They're fighting a little dog and all this stuff's going on. This kid lives with his dad, who knows people, who knows a laboratory whose initials are HEOL for real. That's. Anyway, so we get the mad scientist stuff and everything like that, and I'm just digging the visuals. Mike Golden is the one putting them in there, and I'm like, this is filler. I'm like, are we going anywhere? It's just chaotic, and they're just constantly fighting and stuff like that, right? Of course, Mike Golden's keeping me in there, and as we go along, things start slowing down, things become more clear, and you can kind of tell that we're finally getting a story coming. Editorial had to have jumped in there. That's the only way I can figure out and explain this, right? So, they're putting them in the Marvel universe. We're getting these great things going on, uh, and they're just running all over Florida, and they're finding each other. They got separated. Okay, and the way I'm telling this is exactly the way that I'm feeling how the story moves. I'm like, did I miss something? Sometimes, story wise, I got to go back and forth and see if I missed something. Usually, I didn't and stuff, right? But anyway, yeah, when they get back to the microverse, I hope this thing really picks up because I think that's where they need to be to go against the Baron because the Baron is doing things. We're seeing him enslaving people. We're finding out that when we get back to this, and of course, as you look at this, there's no joking around about it stuff, right? I've always said when it comes to pop culture and possibly the real world, but at least with movies and things like that, you have two eras, okay? 1977, you have pre-Star Wars, you have post-Star Wars, and this is definitely a post-Star Wars thing. Now, with that said, just from the era that I grew up on and having lots of time to reflect and talking about these things here on YouTube and just with, geeking out every now and then stuff, right? I have a real fondness for the Star Wars influenced sci-fi. I've always kind of wonder if it should be its own separate genre, right? I mean, I love my serials. I love my Buster Craft, Flash Gordon, the serials and stuff, right? Um, I love my Fantastic Planet, right? I love my Fantastic Voyage. I'm sure if I go on, I'm gonna love my Planet of the Apes, right? But Star Wars, and all of a sudden you had Battlestar Galactica. And then in comics we had Atari Force. Everything was sort of influenced by it, right? You got these hardware wars. As a kid, I loved hardware wars. They had the Wookiee monster, things like that. I mean, it was there. It's my era. I get it, right? So there's no doubt in my mind that when we see this, there is a definite Darth Vader influence and stuff, right? So here's where I'm at. this is where I'm at with it. This is where I'm starting with the man thing. I'm a Steve Gerber guy, so this should be interesting to see how they handle, um, you know, anybody that knows fear burns at the man thing's touch. So we'll see what's going on here, right? But like I said, from what I understand, the first 12 issues are the golden ones. A few reviews that I've seen over the years. I think Tom Scolioli probably has a good review that I had saved. And as I'm talking, I realize I want to go back and watch. I've had it saved for a couple weeks. But other than that, I do kind of recommend Micronauts, but not for anything where you want to see. It depends what you're looking for, man. If you want some escapism, something fast paced, things where in your mind you're going to have the sound effects in your ears, little people buzzing around in their little ships and fighting and all this stuff, and just sort of chaotic, sort of like a G.I. Joe cartoon of the 80s where laser beams are flying and by the legion across the screen, but nobody's getting shot and stuff. So it's in there. There's some stakes in there. So that's that. Okay. Micronauts. That's my sort of review. Great art, a lot of nostalgia, Star Wars influenced. So if that is your era, this is for you, I think. Right. All right. So what do we have here? I mean, we're just going to take our time talking about some stuff, man. Gore Vidal's here. Friar Tuck, Prime One Collector, Comics of Leno. I think Graphic Man. I think I saw Sequential Geek down there. Well, look at you guys. All right. Oh my God, I just noticed that Akira box set in the back of the room. Yeah, I have a great wife. She got that for me for Christmas last year. And sadly enough, there's 4 collected books in it, hardback. I've only gotten through the first one. So I'm a horrible husband. No, I'm just joking. I'm awesome. The fossils are alternative. Will I'll probably always be. Yes. Here we go. Graphic Man, when after years, and I hope I'm saying that right, girlfriend turns off her power sword but goes ahead and kills that evil soldier during that war. It was a cool moment. It really moved a young Graphic Man. Awesome. That's what I'm saying. Yeah, I mean, I think I just don't see the hype with it, but I totally get why people are into it and stuff, right? So yeah, I would definitely recommend at least what I've read that to people. And Acre Years Turning, if that's how you say the name, is definitely coming. I really like a character like him, but I've always already heard over the years that when Volume 2 came out, he took his helmet off. I think that's a mistake. All right, Gore Vidal, good morning, Tim. The first issue with Mike Golden are brilliant. Remember the X-Men Micronauts team up? I've only read one issue of that. That's all that was in the house. I do need to get that. And remember, as I read the Micronauts, I may get more and more excited about them. You know what I mean? Like, and I'm not trashing them. It's just that first issue to me was really a mess. So I really apologize for not meeting you eye to eye on that, Gore. Mike Golden is brilliant. Absolutely. I think I'm reading you right here. I'll catch the rewind. Just wanted to say hi. All right. Great. Yes, definitely. Oh, what is a micronaut? Micronauts apparently are a race of people who look human, and there's some other weird things out there that you shrink and shrink. Think Quantum Mania. Quantum Mania. When I was watching Quantum Mania, I'm like, I was really expecting some micronauts to pop up. Ant-Man and the Quantum Mania. There you go. Friar Tuck. I had a few Micronauts as a child. I believe I had the robot horse thing. It does appear. There are 2 people with the centaur look. I can't remember what it was called and a few of the figures. Yeah. And I remember I have gotten a hold of a few, like the Time Traveler. They felt real flimsy. The joints were just pure plastic, man. A guy sold some Micronauts comics at my shop. I was there and asked him what he thought about the series. He thought he hadn't read them. He didn't want to handle the books. Owner told him, owners, yeah, told him about the books. Yeah. So I think there's room. I think there's a little bit of a Micronauts resurgence going on. I think, grain of salt, because I don't keep up with these things like I used to. I think the licensings went back, and it could be old news to people, but the license went back to Marvel, and we're about to get an omnibus you can pre-order. I think I saw that. Veterans Day. Thank you. Everybody's who served and everything. Yep. Yep. They weren't expensive. Mike Golden's here in Denver at the Rocky Mountain Comic Con. Can't fit it in. That's what she said, but I'm up. There's a spirit. He's actually kind of cool to meet. I've told some Mike Golden stories over the years where I met at Heroes Con. Here we go. Star Wars, Hobbits in Space. Yes, J.K. Ballard, dismissively called the first film. Unreal. It's a Western. Yeah. I would love an Alan Moore scripted Swamp Thing, Man Thing story. I'm going to talk about some Alan Moore Swamp Thing here in a minute. It's good science fiction. What we got here? FYI, Barnes and Noble's having 50% Criterion movie sale. Nice. Get your physical media, people. I think it's very important. Okay. All right. Now, what else have I been reading, right? And that I kind of would recommend. Now, the things I'm recommending, you got to be a comic book fan. To me, you've got to be a comic book fan. The kind of thing where you enjoy reading comic books. You can enjoy a context and everything. Let me get these out of the way. Um, I was actually thinking about getting, if you don't want to go out and get the Micronauts, they got this Baxter series that came out in the early 80s, 4 issues that reprint all 12 issues of the first 12, right? I picked these up over the years and just kind of found, I'm out of dollar boxes here and there, right? All right, so moving on next. Now, I have a full set of this. It's right here on the shelf over here, right behind me, right? But with ollies and stuff, it was kind of convenient to get a few things to put on the shelf so that I didn't have to dig through these boxes and stuff, right? Um, I'm about afraid to turn the camera around to show you. But anyway, there's all kinds of things over here, all kinds of things over here. But one of the most underrated series, in my opinion, started in 1999 with the JSA Secret Files, right? James Robinson, who had just been knocking it out of the park in the 90s, Starman, Golden Age. I appreciate some of the stuff he's done on cable here and there. And the guy sort of ended up taking off to make a movie and directed, I think, called Comic Book Villains, which I have seen. And I hate that it didn't work out for him because it was a fun movie, but it just didn't pop. But anyway, he was moving forward. It's sort of like he kind of became. I hate to say it, but what happened was his handling of Jack Knight, Starman, and his Golden Age miniseries and things like that. He sort of kind of took Roy Thomas's place, in my opinion, of what would happen with Earth 2. If you still remember that before the crisis, but those Golden Age characters and stuff like that, right? So they started bringing back the GSA. Now, I'm a big Earth 2 fan. Infinity Incorporated, All Star Squadron, World War II, even going back before all that stuff. I love that stuff, right? I love that stuff. And, I can't help it. I just do, right? So when they were bringing back the JSA and they had Dave Goyer, who I really wasn't real familiar with until this. I think I knew he wrote the screenplay to Blade, but it's the 90s. Who knows, right? James Robson came on, and of course, Jeff Johns would come on and take this over. But of course, it had Jack Knight, Starman, joining a team where I was like, I knew it was coming to an end and I better get all my jackknife that I can. But this is the first trade I got at Ollie's. Like I said, I was there from the beginning. I bought this thing monthly, pre-ordered it monthly, everything. But the JSA Secret File #1 had come out. There was also some one shots that I'm not going to get into that was sort of reminded people who these World War II characters were, where they brought in like Mark Waid and some other people and kind of introduced them. But then we speed up here and we have the original Wesley Dodds Sandman standing on the Himalayas, and the bad guy, Mordred, comes up. I think it's Mordred. Anyway, he comes up. He's talking to him, and Wesley's talking about missing Diane as he's standing there on the Himalaya mountains. And he's looking at Mordred face to face. This old man standing there thinking about his wife who just passed away a few months ago. And he knows he's going to die this night, right? So he stands up to Mordred, and Mordred's going to I'll get what I want out of you. I'm not going to ruin the hook of the plot and stuff. And for one last time, we have the same man pop up, go up against an unbeatable foe, and then sacrifice himself so that Mordred can't get any information out of him. So with that, we have the remaining members of the GSA deciding to get more members, and we get into legacy and generations and stuff, right? I love this series because the tone, they take it serious, right? There's some themes in there that they don't get the big head, but they know who they are. We're the ones that influenced everybody. It brought respect to these characters, right? The artwork, Steven Sadowski. Like I said, Steven Stadowski, he's one of those guys that, if you like your Neil Adams, Ivan Rice, even like a little bit of Paul Ryan in there and stuff like that, he draws some great stuff. This thing is action packed. They bring in characters, they tie things together, they reference history. Infinity Incorporated, Atom Smasher. And then Jeff Johns came on and they brought in Black Adam. I have been a Black Adam fan since 1980, since I saw him in a Filmation cartoon on Saturday morning on a show called Hero High. And to see Jeff Johns bring in Black Adam, and this was it. This was the linchpin. This is where Black Adam came back, and Jeff Johns started using him in this series and stuff, right? But everything is in there, man. The legacy, talking about history, bringing things together. You can forget about Crisis to a certain extent. And the tone is exactly what is needed here and there, right? Sometimes it gets dark, sometimes it brings back characters dark, and then they do little things that they tweaked history, right? The Crimson Avenger, if you remember him, he was from the 19. Well, he started out looking like the Shadow and stuff, right? He had the fedora, mask, red cape, or something like that. Who knows? And he had two guns, very pulp-like, and then they made him into a superhero, where he had the put in face mask, a domino mask that was all red. He had a fin on top of his head, and he had a great big huge black sun. And they turned that around to where that's not a black sun. In this series, Jeff Johns, when the guy popped up, so Crimson Avenger pops up, but there's a legacy there, right? You end up finding out that he brought a little bit of darkness to the character that made it all of a sudden made it very cool, because that wasn't a dark sun. He said it was a giant bullet hole. And I was just like, well, that just changed the whole tone of the character. So JSA is one of those series that is so underrated. You can get them cheap. And it is, and amazingly, this is what I was kind of doing. These are while these are retro reviews. Even there's some things I haven't read for years or for the first time. I judge a great series by the rereadability, right? I'm going to talk about Alan Moore in a little bit and stuff like that, right? So I'm picking this up. It's been years since I've read it all the way through. I read it all the way through as it came out, and then I would revisit a few things. But this is JSA Volume 1. I think it ran for like 80 some issues. James Robinson, Dave Goyer, and then we had Jeff Johns come on. Jeff Johns started working on Infinity Crisis, and a guy named Keith Champagne came on. Paul Levitz came on, and then they got Justice Society proper after this, which was, a different tone, but this is the magic. So yeah, this is just great. This is fantastic. Like I said, I have a whole short box of GSA related stuff and everything of this series. So yeah, like I said, good and cheap. Hot Girl shows up, Star Girl shows up, Jack Knight's in there, Hippolyta, it's Wonder Woman's mother, Hippolyta. John Byrne had done a few things in Wonder Woman where time got changed, where we did have a Wonder Woman in World War II, but it was her mother, and she was a member of the GSA. So there was a few tweaks in there, but it doesn't matter. There's nothing here that makes your eyes roll. But as somebody who liked Infinity Incorporated, who's somebody who read Sandman, as somebody who loved the legacy stuff and everything that Roy Thomas did before Crisis mixed it up, Dr. Fate by far was the biggest thing that surprised me on who the new Dr. Fate is, how it makes sense, and how the Egyptian ties are there. And if you stay through this series all the way through it, you get a lot of payoffs, right? Hawkman, Dr. Fate, there's things that were just obvious and they brought them together. Dr. Fate, Hawkman, Black Adam, Metamorphos out there, they all have ties to ancient Egypt. Halfway through the series, there is a story where they go back in time and you see a team of these heroes in Egypt, and it makes sense, right? This is not Savage Avengers, okay? This is not anything like that. It all makes sense. It's fantastic, right? JSA, great series. One more thing that just gets me excited. Oh, let me see what we got here. Oh, Crack is still here. Good to see you, Crack. Earth 2 is awesome. Those GLA, GSA teams ups and were some of the few DC books I bought as a kid. It was actually Justice League of America 207, crossing over with All-Star Squadron in 82. I think it was 1982, with Per Degaton as the same the big villain, the crime syndicate popping up. It was 9 years old where I looked around my room, and this is where I actively had to get to a store with a spinner rack in town to get these issues. I was already picking up Captain Carrot. I've been getting some Legion here and there. I was getting stuff, right? But that's when I realized I looked around my room, saw my stacks that I had built up, saw I had my stepdad stuff at this time. It was just the stepdad stuff organized, and that's when I knew I was a comic book collector. That's when I gave the label. It was one of those things where I declared it, then it was outside to play, right? Oh, looks like I'm collecting these things, and I went on. Just that little moment of awareness. So yeah, we got here. Our Man had a great series with Rag Morales, and artwork that was worth checking out for JSA fans. Yeah, I'll second that. I've got the 1 million crossover issues, I believe. All right, so what else is Timber? Now, every now and then I will recommend something, and I always want to emphasize make it cheap. Get it. Oh, wait. Before we get to this next one, I just saw this in the stack. I don't know how this got in here, but I do not buy new comics rarely. I think last year, 2 years ago, I bought 27 new books the entire year. But I had to get this one because it was Mark Waid doing World's Finest. I'd heard some positive things about it. Breen, if you're out there, I think you were the one that I think I would see you hold up books somewhere and say it's actually kind of good. You really was surprised. So this is like issue 20, 22 or something, right? And I got this cheap on eBay, and I want to reference that. Okay, cheap on eBay, right? And it's this fantastic full cover. I put it on Instagram, and it's because Batman and Superman, we revisit Kingdom Come. Let's put it that way, right? And I can tell you what, I cannot believe there's something as great as this cover, which is very cool. I'm not really into variant covers, foil covers, but you can always win. It's like country music. I don't like country music, but by God, if there's a good song, I'll tell you it's a good song. You know what I mean? But then when I open this up, most mediocre story I have, it's exactly what I knew it was going to, it's what I suspected it was going to be. A very mediocre story that I'm just like, is this filler? I mean, so I've already pre-ordered the rest of the Kingdom Come stories. Kingdom Come pulled me in. So yeah, there's your review. Very underwhelmed. Now, getting back to this Batman. This is a Batman one, right? Oh wow. Oh, I love this. Comic Crack. I'm still here as a true Canadian. I'm listening while driving to the Tim Hortons for a coffee. Oh, Canada, man! I would literally stand and sing the Canadian anthem for you, Crack, if I knew the words. I really would. That's awesome. I love that. Anyway, so now we're doing Batman. We're going back to the 90s. It's an Elseworld story, right? Elseworld stories really blew up after the Gotham by Gaslight before they even had a label for them, especially with Batman, Red Rain, some Superman stories. There's tons of Elseworld out there, right? And they must have been profitable, or they, because they kept doing them, right? And I'm fine with those, right? I'm fine with those, right? Because they are what they are, and they're complete and finite, and you actually get a beginning, middle, and end with a lot of stuff. That's the cool thing about Elseworld stories, in my opinion, man. It is entertaining reading, and they can finally do things with these characters without anybody getting on them in marketing or whatever. Like, let's not change our characters now. The illusion of change, the illusions of evolution of a character. Well, you can actually do it in these. And the Elseworlds were great because it's different settings, different worlds, different time periods. And I love period pieces. I love when people have done their research or they're remembering things and they do a period piece, right? As much as I love Stephen King's The Body, the movie Stand By Me, it's more of him remembering that era, what they did every day, right? I like the I got the first issue of Grendel and the Shadow that places in the 30s. Same in Mystery Theater, which I've been talking about forever. It feels like set in the 30s, to where I feel like they've at least constructed a world that feels so authentic. I can taste and smell the lead and the gasoline and hear the sounds and stuff in the dirty, nasty city and stuff like that, right? And this takes place in 1961 and 1962. It's by Howard Chaykin. So right there, you should know what you're in for if you like Howard Chaykin. This is not the experiment, unless you get this really cheap to dive into something by Howard Chaykin, right? And I talked about this a little bit. I've talked about this on the before, right? So it was a 3-issue miniseries, and it was such a hit, and it was nominated for an Eisner that it ended up getting a one-shot called Thrill Killer 62. So you have Thrill Killers and Thrill Killer 62. I did not dig out the original miniseries, but it's in trade. This is the original trade that is actually worth a little bit of money, I guess, because I consider it a first print from the 90s. But you have a black label trade that I also have over here somewhere, because this got water damaged while I was traveling stupidly. Anyway, and I've pretty much have almost totally, except for a few wavy pages, I've repaired it. But anyway, you got 3 issues and this one shot here, Thrill Killer 62. And I absolutely love the story. And I also love the fact that it has not been exploited. It has not been talked about a lot. And it was nominated for an award. And it's by Dan Barrington Art. His art, I mean, just the palette, his knowledge of palettes to make it look. It looks like a pulp cover from that era. You know, if you read those hard boiled things or those racy little back magazines and stuff from the time, it feels like the early '60s before Kennedy was shot. Robin is a beatnik. I think Batgirl, and I say think because I'm due for a reread. I've only read this 3 times since it came out. Well, 4 times counting the time it came out. And Batgirl is the one with the money. She's a femme fatale. Robin is a beatnik, thus the Van Dyke that much like I used to wear on here, except mine had handles on the side. I really identified with him. He has a leather jacket, and then you have the villains. And this is just simply one of my favorite Batman stories, even though it's not really Batman centric. It's got femme fatale things to it. It's got Rat Pack references. Feels, maybe that's why I'm in that kind of mood. Yeah, this is the early '60s. The early '60s is where David Lynch likes to talk about a lot of stuff, man. It references the era and the time. There's JFK. There's some Bond movies coming out. It references the pop culture. And of course, it has a plot going on. But like I said, this is very grounded, very hard boiled. And I could actually believe that Howard Chaykin may be remembering, Gotham City / New York in early '62. So I love everything about it. I think it's a fantastic little masterpiece, and I love that it's its own little thing. And as if anything, if you want to check out some pages online, or make sure you get it cheap. To know if this is your cup of tea. Oh, I just think it's so cool, man. If you know Dan Barrett's art, and if I'm trying to find something that's going to be really cool here. But they just have it all, man. It's the mood. This makes me want to smoke a cigarette, have a drink, slick my hair back, and be like, hey, check out that girl with them gams. Check out that little hot tomato, right? So that's something I'm currently rereading and take my time through. Like I said, this is, oh yeah, Elseworlds, Thrill Killer and Thrill Killer 62. And like I said, there's heavy stakes. It's Howard Chaykin. And always remember, guys, Howard Chaykin actually doesn't like superheroes. Okay. So he has no problem doing horrible things to some people. You got it? All right. All right. So now this next one is just going to be a joy to show. I hope you guys are feeling nostalgic, all right? So as a kid, Jack Kirby scared let me check out this here, man. I'm getting excited, man. This excites me to actually read and talk about things. All right. The Breen. The Kingdom Come storyline is one issue in. We'll see how it goes. Yeah, like I said, I got the rest of them pre-ordered. I'm trying not to be biased. I'm trying to be very forgiving, but I'm so glad I didn't buy that issue for full price. I'm just gonna go ahead and say it. I was like, yeah, okay, Bronze Age, Shanover Rocket, that period piece. Yes, gotcha. I hear you. JSA was great. Bought it as it came out. It's fantastic. It's a very underrated series. All right. So this one, as a kid, like I said, I didn't realize how lucky I was, right? The stepdad, of course, had gone. I think he was 17 in 1970. My mother was very young when she had me. She married the stepdad when I was 3, and he came with a collection of knives, like pirate knives. He had come out of the Navy, medical discharge or something. And I've told the story very much. He can remember buying Fantastic Four #3 off the rack and things like that. He was always remembering books he had in the midst of his chemical warfare in his head. Okay. So I never knew when to believe him or not. So when he had gone to the Navy and had come back, his mother did what all mothers seem to have done back then when their kids went to Vietnam or something. She threw out all his stuff, including his amazing comic book collection. Right now, here's the problem: he lived on top of a mountain called Smith Ridge, and is actually a dirt road cut into the woods and the trees and stuff. And you go back through there, and there's a house here on the side and a house here on the side, and you just go on all through there, right? He was actually part of the reason as a teen why cops didn't go up there anymore, because where it's one road in, one road out, they had cut down a tree, trapped a cop to where he couldn't get out, were up on a hillside, threw rocks at him. So they didn't go up there. They couldn't win. They couldn't climb the hills to get these people, even, and all this stuff. Different time, different era. So anyway, so when he comes back out of the Navy and he goes to look for his comic books, they're gone. So he would go to visit his friends. Hey guys, I'm back from the Navy, and they'd be like, "Yeah, come on in." They'd be sitting there talking to him, and then they would sit down, put on a record, and he was like, "Look what I have here." I mean, he would just his friends would reach down beside of them and pull up his Jack Kirby Fantastic Four books and read them and stuff. Over the years, however he did it, he did get some reclaimed, and that's how I was able to read X-Men #3, my first X-Men comic book, first appearance of the Blob. Uh, Fantastic Four, I think 67, the famous Cocoon issue with the coming of him, who would be Adam Warlock, and that freaked me out. That Cocoon was so gross, and Jack Kirby freaked me out so bad with his OMAC #1. Kirby was king in that house as far as my stepdad was there, but he freaked me out, and so anyway, I actually colored that issue. I can show it to you. Actually, I mean, yeah, I mean, I sit here and think about it, but it's a white cover with that Cocoon on it. And of course, as a little kid, I would take my Crayolas and I had to fix it because, like I said, he creeped me out. If a Jack Kirby comic book was in my room, cover up, where I could see it, I would have to reach over there and flip it over because it freaked me out. Little did I know, by 80, 81, thanks to Thundar the Barbarian, it all clicked in my head. And from 7 years old on, I was a Kirby nut. Okay. So I had the stepdads, some of the Kirby, a lot of the Fantastic Four, a lot of other things from it were being Fantastic Four centric. So over the years, the stepdad somehow got those books back, probably talked to people, probably bought them, who knows, right? And we had an actual spinner rack in the house, in the trailer in 1978, 79, and 80, because we went to Magic Mart, a little store around here, and I thought I was going to be able to walk down the toy aisle and stuff and look around, but he drives us around back where the trash can is, and they had actually just thrown out a spinner rack, and he knew about it, picked it up, took it home. So I had Silver Age books on a spinner rack in his room, and his room was also lined with all the Kiss posters that came in the freaking albums, with a record player there and all this stuff. Yeah, it was cool. Um, so I had that, right? So we flash forward to 2010, right? I had all these Fantastic Four Jack Kirby stuff. I picked up a few over the years, traded a few things here and there, and had a pretty good sized run and absolutely loved them. 2010, I moved to Roanoke. 2011, I'm moving out, loading up the U-Haul by myself. And after I got settled into where I was living to, I found out I had one box missing of comics. Little did I know it was actually two boxes. They got my Bronze A. They got my Kirby stuff, guys, my Fantastic Four. So that's my poor pity party thing. That was kind of hard. And we got that, but now we have these epic collections, and the first six epic collections that are in color and stuff are the Stan Lee Jack Kirby run, and I still feel more like it's a Kirby run. I'll don't know. I may go off on Stan Lee here in a minute, right? That was actually one of the things that was charming about my channel, is how I would how I referred to Stan Lee if I had to. Then I had this moment, a few years of like forgiveness, and then all of a sudden, in the back of this, they have some original Kirby artwork, and you can see where he's penciling in dialogue and all this stuff. The proof is there, people. The proof is there that Stan Lee did nothing but refine and probably funnel Jack Kirby. We'll just put it that way, right? Okay. But anyway, these epic collections are fantastic. I have three now. I need three more. I'm taking my time getting them, right? But this reprints issues 52 to 67, Adam Warlock, Black Panther, Inhumans, Silver Surfer, Doctor Doom getting the power cosmic and stuff, right? This is one of the finest and greatest runs of comic books ever. 1 through 104, annuals, specials, whatever. And you just watch Kirby just get more comfortable and comfortable with his art. You get to see how the thing actually is. It's just so great as you read these, how you see the thing go from this soft, cushy piece of skin, looks like walking bubble gum, to where he gets a little bit rockier and, acceptance. And they play with the idea of to me, he is the ultimate Marvel character. A lot of people go straight to Spider-Man, like he is the figurehead, he is the Marvel character, he is everything that Marvel is about. Well, for me, it is the Thing walks on literal feet of clay. If you look at him too hard, he's a tragic figure, there are consequences, he's a superhero, They don't play with the idea of secret identities and things like that. To me, when it comes to what is a Marvel character that you should put in front of people, it is Ben Grimm the Thing, right? So this is how I'm going to be getting all my Jack Kirby Fantastic Four together. These trades are fantastic. They're well colored. They're bright. They're a little bit of gutter loss. They're built well. I have a whole shelf. Where is it at? I have a whole shelf of Epic collections up here. So yeah, when I find the, and of course, I have to say, as always, I always find these cheap. That's why I'm a very patient man and I watch what I do. And I got this probably over 50% off. Every now and then, I think of one or two of them I have ordered at 35% off pre-ordered, but no, I find these on eBay, Amazon. I just keep an eye out for it. Now, this particular one at work, I'm not sure why we got it. I'm assuming it had something to do with Christmas or something, but we got it early. But for whatever reason, we got, it was case manager week. I'm a social worker, and our boss got us a $25 Amazon card for everybody, right? Well, I took that $25 Amazon card and got this and a new hat that's coming today. So there you go. So the Fantastic Four Epic Collections, and I tell you what, man, anybody who wants to get a hold of me, message me on Instagram, on Messenger, find me on Facebook, whatever you want to do. But I am always up for scheduling some kind of show where we talk about Jack Kirby, any series, anything. I would love to do Fantastic Four, New Gods, or anything like that. But just that'd just be fun, a Kirby night. See, on YouTube, there's a lot of things that are low hanging fruit, right? Dark Knight, Watchmen. I don't know how many videos are out there now of people coming on there and giving the history and doing creative editing and taking their new take. And there's been an edgy thing going on for the last couple of years where in Razor Fist, the Rageaholic, he's the only guy who actually has an argument that he backs up with an intelligent conversation, even though I think it is part of being edgy and stuff. But there's a thing where people want to hate on the Beatles and hate on Watchmen. I'm like, and then they can't back up why. It's just the thing to do. It's just a trendy thing to do. I like, I've just got this thing where I'm just like, come on, people, be a little bit of an individual. You know what I mean? Like, come on now, let's not follow trends and act like it's high school and stuff, right? So, but anyway, let me check out some comments here, man, because I was about to get on another train of thought here. Hey, Tats Comics is here. Great to see you. What we got here? Yeah, that's harsh. You lost 2 boxes of comics. That's BitX would hunt them down. That's true. People hating on the Beatles and Watchmen, hilarious. Yeah. So yeah, like I said, I've only seen one person actually have the argument of why they don't like it, and it actually, like, it was in. I think there's a video where he's part of a show. I don't know if he's a guest or what it is, but I think it's like something like Razor Fist destroys Watchmen or Razor Fist destroys Alan Moore or something. I don't know, man. But speaking of Alan Moore, right? Rereadability. When I find a series that just I think is great, the one of the first thing that happens is that, like, you want to read the next issue or you want to turn the next page. Um, One of the things that got really awkward, it is actually one of the things that personally it took a little wind out of my sails, which was my problem. Nobody did it to me, but it was this realization. But couple years ago, I started to hang out with some the newer YouTube channels and stuff. Right, it was kind of fun to hang out with them. But what kind of happened is one of them checked out Crisis on Infinite Earth, and I think that's what everybody was supposed to be reading for this next show. So if I'm remembering correctly, everybody there that I had been, that's one of the reasons I was invited on the show, was because of it being an 80s crisis book, and I having the knowledge and had a few reviews that are completely different than anything you can find out there. I never finished the series, and then it took off a year later with my views and stuff on it. But anyway, I mean, I went deep. I told you where Marv Wolfman got the idea for the Monitor when he was known as the librarian in his head, the Kirby influences, what George Perez said. It wasn't just a review of the book. It was the 15 years leading up to the book or something like that. Anyway, it's out there. Heller Mouse, Christ on Infinite Earth, if you really want to get out there, right? But anyway, but we were doing crosses. They were doing cross on Infinite Earths, and I'm like, a week? They gave themselves a week because you really have to look at Cross on Infinite Earths because that book was like a lot of books before that, before trades became a thing, to where you had Roy Thomas, Mark Grunwald, Steve Gerber doing prose. They loaded those books, right? You did not fly through those books in 3 minutes. You had to reread them and enjoy them and stuff. So when Crisis came out, you got a book that would satisfy you for a month until that second book came out, and you would read through it and look at the details and look at the art. They were just crammed full. So these guys thought they were going. That's when I started realizing there's a whole generation that reads comic books so much different than these 60 years of people before them, or 70 years and stuff, right? They're used to the trade mentality, the decompressed storytelling and stuff, right? It was too much for me. It didn't flow the way they thought it did. It was overwhelming. And I saw this years ago when somebody read, I recommended Mark Grunwald's Squadron Supreme. When they finally read it, they just kept shaking their head, going, "There's so much information here, so much in there. It's overwhelming." You read one chapter of it. Number one, you take a break. You come back to it. You have to read it that way. It doesn't flow the way things were. That was what was special about comics and stuff, right? That not having that trade mentality. So anyway, that was so with doing that, you would read. There's so much out there to read, right? That was the thing. You get in front. You used to go out there. There would be a spinner rack. You had so much money, you would spin it around, and something had to grab you. Uh, it's not that you're going to be able to read every comic book or read every book and stuff. You've got to figure out the good stuff to read, and that's come through experimentation and listening to people and things like that. There's ways you get there. Something just clicks with you for no reason. And what was so cool about not having the internet and stuff back then is that you can enjoy things that weren't popular, or you could be there when something took off the air by pure accident, not knowing it was going to be great. And that's what this next book is, right? You knew something was happening. It was really different. And it was actually so different, some people probably walked away from it, or the word of mouth back then really hit on this. And I have been reading. I want to go ahead and say that I'm thinking my first issue of Swamp Thing that I read by Alan Moore was 1985, if not 1984. The Lin Wynn, Bernie Wrightson books, original Swamp Thing books from 72, were in the house. My first issue that I can recall reading was Swamp Thing #2. And in the last year, I finally reclaimed it. I just had to have it. That's one of my favorite Swamp Thing stories ever, right? But then you had the Alan Moore stuff, right? So this is book 6. I think this is book 6. And they didn't not put the Blue Planet, and that's going to make sense here in a minute. I guess it was the numbering or whatever. But in book 5, there's all kinds of trades out there. I have a full set, full run. Like I said, I'm kind of picking up trades cheap here and there of the stories I want. I know I'm gonna go back and reread. And this is the big one. These are the space stories, right? Now, reading straight through, getting an issue here, an issue there, I was like, Alan Moore blew me away on this. And it was not that it was Alan Moore blowing me away, it was the story. Alan Moore got over by the story getting over, the things that were going on with Swamp Thing, the characterization, the themes, the tone, all those intangibles. And then, my God, something that you don't see a lot of in modern comics, they had literary tools, foreshadowing, symbolism. You know what I mean? You see what I'm saying? Things were moving forward. There was some kind of momentum where you didn't know it was where it was going, but it was going somewhere. And then there's these stories where Swamp Thing is the reader with you. There's this great issue, number 43, I think, that it's one of my favorite issues of Swamp Thing, but you don't hear it talked about a lot. But it was because of Crisis on Infinite Earth. And of course, Swamp Thing had to cross over with that. And so what he did is Alan Moore wrote it to where he was walking around the Justice League satellite, where one of the monitor satellite, the monitor ship, and they have all the heroes down there. It's this classic 2-page spread by George Perez in the actual Cross and Infinite Earths. Well, we get to see that scene through Swamp Thing's eyes, and he compared walking through all these heroes like walking through a parade at Mardi Gras. I mean, it was so fantastic, and that's what I mean. It was just great. It didn't. Alan Moore was writing this sophisticated horror book and character, but he was not acting like comics were dumb. You know what I mean? Like the way he was writing, he had an appreciation. So anyway, but after doing the rereadings, I would really say that I've read the Swamp Thing, Alan Moore books all the way through, let's say a conservative 25 times, right? But then there's issues I have read over and over. Okay, bits and pieces here and there I've read over and over, right? But then all of a sudden it was like, all of a sudden, Swamp Thing went through an old time horror phase. Swamp Alan Moore had phases of him, right? Metaphysical phase, horror phase, and then played around there. And then all of a sudden, it's like he got rejuvenated, and he went full blown sci-fi. He made science fiction stories during his last bit of run there on the Swamp Thing. He had Swamp Thing traveling through the green to a blue planet. I did this video that I'm actually proud of, and it's one of the few videos I really hate that people it didn't catch people. It's my fault. I never blame people for not watching things, but I had this video I did probably about 3 years ago where I realized, and I talk about how I found out, or maybe I noticed or something, where the blue planet with Swamp Thing came out around the same time that Watchmen #4 came out, where you had Dr. Manhattan on Mars, a red planet by himself, and how the two of them reacted to being alone. Completely different. I think you can put them together. Okay. But anyway, this picks up after the blue planet. He travels through the green. Somebody messed with the green, the frequencies, and it shot. It got Swamp Thing pretty much lost through the universe. So he ends up traveling through the universe, through space and stuff, and he comes out on a blue planet that was uninhabited. Then he decides to try to get back, and he ends up on Ran with Adam Strange and Thangarians going to war, and we get to see Swamp Thing become. The visuals were so interesting because he had to make himself out of alien plants and things like that. And it's these great takes on Adam Strange, showing how cool these characters were in R. He just made them all cool, and he started experimenting with these. So it's all about Swamp Thing, kind of like on a sci-fi odyssey, if you will, trying to get home. And all these terrible things going on. And then they really experimented. Who did this one? John Todelman. I think this is the one where he made actual sculptures and took pictures of them in order to tell the story. But basically, in this one, I mean, this one is like hardcore 2000 AD sci-fi, my friend. This is the one where a sentient ship captures and kind of forces Swamp Thing to have a baby to create a new life form, make a baby with him and stuff. But John Todelbaum apparently was, from what I understand, making sculptures and taking pictures, and that's how this one is really out there. So it was like this era rejuvenated Alan Moore, because this is probably around the time that he was getting disenchanted, if you will, with DC and stuff. But all of a sudden we get into these sci-fi stories, and all of a sudden they become like artistic experiments. So yeah, he just kept going and going. I haven't read anything like this until I finally got a hold of some Tales of Bean World. So that's why I want this. These are Metron brought in new gods, things like that, traveling around. Found a planet, and then he pulled things that were going on around DC. Steve Englehart and Bill Willingham, I think, played around with a sentient vegetable plant people. I hate to be that way, who were Green Lanterns, and you go to that planet and some horrific stuff happens with sentient plants when you have the Swamp Thing who can grow and make plants. So yeah, as much as I would like to, the Swamp Thing book I would tell people to actually get is where Swamp Thing goes to hell to save um, his girlfriend, if you will. That's a great one. That introduced that's a great story about there's a rose grown in hell now. Let's put it that way, right? But anyway, but this one right here, this era, this sci-fi stuff, this is some hardcore stuff, man, and it deserves to be reread and stuff, right? And it's the kind of thing that there's 2 or 3 things in this that if people picked it up and became aware it was in it, holy crap, it'd be controversy in every generation coming up, depending on what they think. So yeah, Alan Moore Swamp Thing, anything Alan Moore, I end up reading and rereading. So it really keeps it up there. Rereadability, Riri Williams. You're going to jinx us, brother. Rereadability is what makes a classic. I can revisit Marvel Man, V for Vendetta, and From Hell, as the books were new to me and read for the first time. Now that you mentioned From Hell, I almost got rid of my From Hell trade because after I finally read it, chapter two about took me out. I'm like, this is a little early for me to almost be took out. I'm so glad I got past chapter two. And when I finally read that beast of a story and enjoyed that beast of a story and thought it was fantastic, I thought I would never read it again. I needed time to process, and I've ended up reading it about five times now, you know, as well as everything else you mentioned. Yeah, Squadron Supreme is Copper Age goodness. Yes, which that thing influenced more than people realize. And I'm so glad when people started realizing that when Kingdom Comes, dating myself. I mean, it's blown my mind the 90s were 30 years ago. I'm one of those people when I hear 30 years ago, I think 1977 or something, right? But anyway, Squadron Supreme influenced a lot. I did not have a comic book shop, so I didn't have Watchmen. I didn't have Watchmen until I think 87 or 88. Thank God I got YouTube, so I can go back and watch some of my videos and hear, remember. But anyway, I had Squadron Supreme month to month, and I knew this was something. I knew this was something. When I read it, I knew this was something. So when everyone, people had their Watchmen going on, I had Squadron Supreme. That was my Watchmen at the time in real time. Yeah. What we got here? Anything that Tom King writes is rereadable. Oh, thank God. I was just sort of like, no, I can't do this. I got to be stoic. I got to practice my stoicism. Yeah, anything that Tom King writes is rereadable. He's one of the greatest writers to ever do it. Yeah, joke. Yes, definitely. I've actually got the Mr. Miracle series. That was, I don't know. I think that was my first Tom King. That's a funny joke. That was my first King experience, I think, from beginning to end. I don't think I can give it away. I even have the promotional poster for that with Mr. Miracle on there. Mr. Miracle is one of my, of course, favorite characters. Like, how many favorite characters do you have, Tim? I've got a list of 20 in my head. Okay. All right. Sequential geek is all over this. Seems like the simpler and lambda stories become, the easier it is for people to accept AI to end writing corporate entertainment. Well, it's definitely making people want. I think it's more along the line where people don't have a complete, and I'm one of them. I have more of, but not a complete understanding of the AI treatment and what we're talking about here. But I think what it is that people that are still interested and still fans of this stuff and grew up, and we are a smaller group than we were even 5 years ago, will take anything other than what's going on. All right. They just want to be fed. They want the entertainment. They want, who knows what could happen. John Tottleman was another level during this period. Yeah, and it turns I'm lucky. I've met him, and I actually have a trade signed by him and stuff. Right, that the artwork they were doing. I held on to a lot of the pre-Alan Moore Volume Two Swamp Thing books that came out because of the movie. They started up and lasted about 19 issues before Alan Moore came on issue 20, I think, or maybe 19. Anyway, but I used to know this stuff off the top of my head. I've got the box right there. But anyway, yeah, I held on to those books. I think Martin Pascal was writing them, and they were rough. I hate to say that. I hate to, I'm sure Mr. Pascal was doing the best that he could, but they were rough. But the art in there, I'm pretty sure it was Tottleman and I think Bicep were already there. It's been so long. I sold them a couple months ago and got a bunch of Moon Knight keys from the 70s. Blew my mind. $22 worth of dollar books that I had gotten over the years got me the videos there, a bunch of stuff. You sold me on Swamp Thing book 6. Sounds very cool. I'm pretty sure this is number 6. Definitely read the yeah, book 6. But like I said, this is hardcore sci-fi, my friend. I mean, prepare yourself. Now, book 5 has the story that leads him going up in there, but yeah, check it out. Make sure you get it cheap, man. Get a sample of anything. Do watch a video or something or a synopsis. apparently I got one more here, and maybe I should have saved Swamp Thing for last. At the time, I remember reading the letters page and other comics, people talking about more Swamp Thing. I knew I'd heard the name before, and looked at Warrior magazine. Same guy. Yeah, that's what I mean. It was so that's one of the cool things. I mean, the 70s is my favorite era to read. Uh, Comics, the Gerber stuff, the people who had grown up on comics, Wolfman, Lin Win, and stuff like that. There's an energy there I kind of like. I really do. Even with some of their worst stuff, there's an energy. There's this joy that even like Gerber, as much as Gerber is being Gerber, is weird and stuff, and mind trippy he is and stuff like that. There's still a joy. Even Jim Starlin, as much as he raged against people and stuff, there's a joy in those books. But it was in the 80s where we were like witnessing history and didn't know it, that British invasion and how things were changing and the way that comics were becoming, oh my God, I can't believe I'm going blank. The lady who, the president of DC, the lady who came in the 70s, freaked everybody out. I can't believe I'm going blank on her name. But anyway, she was all about having room for letting creators be creators, a little bit of artistic expression and stuff, right? And the things we saw, I mean, it's just amazing what happened in the 80s. And you don't even have to focus on what was going on in the books, the characters and stuff. We're talking about exploration of like I said, of the comics being like an art, people telling personal stories like Frank Miller did with Ronin, even though you got to read the interview that I have in Amazing Heroes or something from that time where he's talking about it. Just the things that were happening. It was one of the last time. It was like it was sort of like we had the last generation of outlaws in comics, while at the same time we had comics becoming a bit more refined. You know what I mean? Like there's a lot of changes finally really going on. Okay. I began reading soon after. Yeah, yeah, yeah. What we got here? When I think 30 years ago, I think 1977. Yo, Howlermouth, if you look out the window, not much has changed in the past 30 years. But if it was 1993, you look out in the window, you're actually more in line with what I'm thinking, why I think that way. It isn't just a thing where I'm like, oh my God, the time has flown by. I really think from if you look at the last 20 years, not a lot has changed. There's no real identity for the I think for the decades that's substantial. Let's look at fashion. Okay, go look at fashion from the 40s. Go look at fashion from the 50s. Pompadours, motorcycles. Go to the 60s. You got your hippies and the rise of your mods. And you go into the 70s, you got the polyester and the flammable materials and the psychedelic colors and stuff. And I used to know why they did that. There was actually a reason that those clothes in the 70s were so ugly, besides cocaine, and then you definitely get to the 80s and there's the alternative scene, the preppy scene, the pastel colors going all to full black at the end. You get into the 90s and it was all flannel, or 90210, you know what I mean? And then around 96, it seemed like we went from Alice in Chains and Nirvana and the rise of Neil Young once again as godfather of grunge. And then also we ended with boy bands and stuff. And then I don't know, oh my God, what was it? The Mickey Mouse Club, rise of the Mickey Mouse Club into pop culture and movies. And it's like we've never really recovered. And it's like everything that is cool never really popped. There's a band that I think is fantastic, and they're called MGMT. I don't know if that means anything. I've never heard anybody talk about them, but they got this great song called Time to Pretend, and they got a song called Little Dark Age, and they're about 10 years apart. There's all kinds of music and stuff that's been underground, it feels like, yet there's people that's probably been in the know. So yeah, there's cultures there, but nothing's really become popular. I remember in the early, I never thought I'd be nostalgic for Blink 182. And there's an era there where suburban kids decided to be punk and get tattoos, and they had these awful spikes in their hair. Um, oh my God, I'm trying not to get off track here, but at the same time, you could like dress in a leather jacket and get a pompadour, or you could like get a pair of cut off jeans or khakis. Everything there for a while. Nothing was really Jeanette Kahn. Thank you, God. No, that is embarrassing. So anyway, I got one more book here. I was about to go on a big rant here about how culture doesn't feels like culture got stagnant there for a little bit. That's not important because culture has moved. It's just there's so much out there. It's not obvious. Trina Robbins. Yeah, Conan Berger. Karen Berger. Oh man, Karen Berger. Wow. Let me see what I got here. Yeah, yeah. The more I find out about what she did, the more disappointed I get over the last few years of news on her and stuff like that. But what is great about this, or let me find it here. Yeah, yeah. She was so loved that like even the artist would put little Easter eggs about her. That's not the Burger Bar. That's Karen Berger's bar. Things like that. Yeah, Vertigo. Yeah, Vertigo may have been like the peak DC as the older I get, being able to look back on 2020 vision there. Several years later, when reading Hellblazer, guest writer Grant Morrison and guest artist David Lloyd wrote and draw a two-part Halloween horror story. It was great seeing Lloyd's work in there. Maybe I'll pull that out for the review next time I do one of these shows because I know exactly what you're talking about. Kids by MGMT. Thank you. It is called Kids. Time to Pretend. I was singing the song in my head. So my faux pas. Yeah. So, okay. So the last book I got, and I have great joy in this. I had some Marvel stuff here, but all I'm going to end up doing is like trashing it and stuff. And I actually got this stuff for free. Uh, but I'm not, it's garbage. Kelly Sue DeConnick has got to be, if she is anything, the energy that comes through her writing. Yeah, I'll do one here. What did I do with it? Oh, I threw them to the side a minute ago. But anyway, I got like this Trick or Treat. I didn't want it, but it's like this Trick or Treat reprint of her Captain Marvel #1. And the book has her like flying through space, and she doesn't earn the name Captain Marvel, Miss Marvel. She doesn't earn the name Captain Marvel. She just has this splash page where she's in space and her eyes are all glowing. She's like, I'll just take the damn name. Entitlement coming through. Talk about there's no great story. There's no calling there. There's nothing there that makes them act like heroes. You know what I mean? Like to me, the Punisher, as much as he is a serial killer, is still a hero to a certain aspect, even though it's anti-hero or however you want to go with labels and stuff. That Captain Marvel book by Kelly Sue DeConnick and stuff like that, I'm like, do you not fucking realize you're doing an origin story for a villain when they decide they're just going to take things? I was just like, oh my God, it's almost boost. It's like she's the Booster Gold of the Marvel Universe. But anyway, there's you a quote. There's you a blurb. Captain Marvel. I like how we bookended this video, talking about people not giving a crap about the Marvels movie. And then I end up with a quote where Miss Marvel, Captain Marvel, is the Booster Gold of the Marvel Universe. So this is going back, right? And this is one of those things I really can't believe I haven't talked much more about, right? But this was for a reader. Now, when you get into Grant Morrison, right? I love Grant Morrison stuff because I know whatever I'm reading is going to get a reaction out of me. I'm never going to be bored. You know what I mean? Maybe I don't understand it, or maybe it's not for me, but the man is not a lazy writer. Does that make sense? Like the man is just like I feel like he's the Gardner Fox of his generation with ideas and things he's doing. Execution is different, and the man also has a love of comics. When he got on Batman, he tried to actually, in some shape, way, or form, read everything that made Batman ever, 60 years at the time of Batman stuff, I think, or, so on and so on. And he tried to put it all in there. He stayed on the Batman books, in my opinion, in the 2000s too long, to the point where I kept certain issues and got rid of them. And there's a Batman 66 here where I can't find it, so I hope I didn't accidentally sell that. But anyway, he had some great ideas. He pulled things. He did things with Batman like Jeff Loeb did with the Hush miniseries. He did things with Batman we sort of wanted to see, and it didn't take away anything. You know what I mean? Like when you tell the origin of Wolverine, you've taken away something. With Batman, he answered some questions and stuff, and it was kind of cool, right? But anyway, the whole thing about Grant Morrison that is kind of cool is he kind of talked about it in an interview somewhere, probably in the early 2000s, is that there's a lot of his books. It doesn't matter what company he was with, but he's telling a story in a Grant Morrison universe, right? He introduced Phantom X, Weapon 13, in his X-Men run. And everybody for decades had been referring to Logan, Wolverine, as Weapon 10, part of that experiment, or Weapon X. Excuse me, he was Weapon X, right? And then Grant Morrison decided that it was the Roman numeral 10 and that the Captain America experiment of Captain America was like Weapon 2. In his mind, he had, you know, different phases of the same super soldier program. You know what I'm saying? Like, and he didn't spoon feed it to you. It was just fantastic, right? So then he goes to DC and he did a series of 3-issue miniseries to experiment with his storytelling. How much story can I tell in a limited amount of space? And he did We Three, which were cybernetic animals, a bunny, a cat, and a dog. And it was fantastic. But he called it We Three because there's 3 of them. But if you know Grant Morrison writing, everything he's wrote, WE could be weapon, and number 3 could be the third experiment in the super soldier program. Experiment on animals before you get to the real Captain America and trying to recreate it, or whatever they did, right? They were trying to recreate the super soldier serum. I messed it up. But anyway, you get the point. Um, so before they treated mutants like animals because he had the healing factor, they experimented on animals, and that could all be the one Grant Morrison universe. Now that's how Final Crisis came up. Final Crisis came out, and I was excited about this, right? Grant Morrison finally got to do the big Crisis. They tried to act like there was like a trilogy going on, right? You had Identity Crisis, and then you had Infinite Crisis, then we got Final Crisis. I don't see how they all make a trilogy, but that's what Dan Didio is going. Maybe it was just a marketing spin, right? But this was the book that was coming out. And at the same time, Grant Morrison was also working on Batman and keeping it going and stuff like that, right? And he had 2 issues here of Final Crisis. This may be the first time that I can think of Grant Morrison have a little bit of lazy writing, but is probably more of a time constraint writing, of anything, to tie into this, right? I had to get those because they're not in this hardback, right? But I was excited to get this because I read tons of Grant Morrison, probably since 1990. It's probably, yeah, 1990, because when Grant Morrison came over, I skipped over it, his Animal Man and stuff like that, because I was like, oh, they're just trying to get another Alan Moore. I was an Alan Moore purist by this point. And I'm like, oh, they're just bringing in a British guy. Very unfair of me, but I was also like, hey, man, I was like 16 or 17. Young and dumb. Thought I knew it all, you know. Anyway, so over the years, Grant Morrison did his Justice League run, and he would reference comics and do some weird stuff. And it's Grant Morrison. You know Grant Morrison, you know Grant Morrison. And then he did the Final Crisis. And oh my God, being a guy who was a DC guy, reading them since 1977, knowing about Commandy being one of his favorite books, and the New Gods and the Kirby and the stuff that Grant Morrison did in Justice League with Rock of Ages and the Dark Side is, where dark is a future where Dark Side won, the anti-life equation, got us all, and everything like that. Well, that all ties into Final Crisis. You can go back and read his Justice League stuff from we'll say 99, 98, and it ties into this. We're seeing that part of the future and stuff. There's the Atom in here, and the Atom in his Justice League in that future story of the world where Darkseid is, he took over and stuff. I love it because as a kid, I'd read the Justice League stuff from the 60s and 70s, and somewhere in there, like on an editorial page or something, they would have a circle of a floating head circle of all the members of the Justice League, Batman, Aquaman, and stuff. And they didn't color in the blue on the Atom's mask. Well, he used that. I'm convinced that's where he got that from. So we had an Atom with a mask. You follow me? So we get in here, and a new god is murdered. It ends with the death of a new god, and it begins with the death of a new god, and it ends with the death of a new god. It is Alpha and Omega. The themes in the story is fantastic, and what is great about it is the more you know about DC lore, which not a lot of people obviously did as much as Grant Morrison and things like that, but you can go back and find it. He used a virus for the God Bullet from a Commandy story. You know what I mean? And things like that. It was all out there. It's like he saw the big tapestry of what was out there, of the great disaster and Anthro, and from Anthro to Commandy and stuff. And he was able to tell this story and stuff, right? So this is the one that where my buddies worked at Y2K Games, and I would come in there, and their parents knew my parents, but like I said, my parents were very young. So I probably had 15 years on them. So I would sit there and we would talk about comics. They'd ask some questions and I would answer them and stuff. So when this came out, They were like, "Are we getting this?" And they went, "Well, Tim said that this was cookie cutter made for him," and Matt's response was, "Fuck that." Okay, so I'm making it sound like it's more complex than it is, but there's so much in here to appreciate. If you're just a DC fan, is what I'm trying to get at, and you can reread it and pick up a few things. It drags in places, it gets very meta in places. It's not a perfect book, but to me, it's an enjoyable book because they bring in Final Crisis. They had a whole bunch of side projects to go to cross over with it. There's a 3D two-part story, and here we go to Limbo. He goes back to his Animal Man stuff from 1988, where he introduced Limbo, where characters that aren't being used exist and they know they're comic book characters, things like that. There's a lot of revisiting. So maybe as I'm sitting here explaining and talking about this, maybe this is a book for you if you're a Grant Morrison fan and his work is a better way to put it, with a dash of Kirby in there, inspiring. What Grant Morrison does when he does nothing but does the flaming carrot thing and read 3,000 Jack Kirby books in one setting. There's a comic book reference for you if you get that one. Okay. I'm glad I'm not alone, man, because why did you have to ruin a perfect good live stream by evoking Kelly Sue killed comics? Yeah, poor Kelly Sue. The Punisher, when you got to get into the sequential geek, the Punisher, when you got to get into the subtle innuendos of shit to an excessive point, like the past 10, 15 years, trying to get over former Marvel, then there's a problem, censored and ignored. Marvel's been a freaking problem forever. Yeah. And sounds awesome. I'm a great Morrison fan. Yeah, like I said, and again, I'm going to throw it out there. Anytime I recommend a book, we all have different tastes. I think when I read this stuff, I look for structure and things that are new to me. That's why we get. We all have different tastes. You know what I mean? I read stuff that people thought were fantastic, and I thought it was mediocre, but I didn't shit on it. I got where they came from. I get why they liked it. So anytime I recommend something with this hobby, I always say go in slow, watch your budget, sample things. Take a chance on a dollar book or something. Don't just go in and grab something without getting a test drive. You know what I mean? I'm like that with everything, right? So we're going to wind this down. I appreciate everybody that has stuck around here. This was fun, guys. This was so much fun. Anybody wants to get on here, message me. We can arrange a Sunday morning. Anybody that wants to do a Kirby Talk podcast, your channel, my channel, whatever, give me a yell. I'm getting kind of rejuvenated for this stuff, right? And hopefully I'll have more and more time to do this. So I always say that. So yeah, jump on here, man. What do we got here? Poor Matt Fraction. He married that Harvey. That's the only reason she got into comics. They started out on message boards with Warren Ellis, and that's where they met, I think. So that tells you something. I like how she thinks she's all punk rock, and she's anything but. She's actually anti-punk rock. That's what gets me. She thinks she's all punk rock and edgy and alternative, and I'm like, no, you're the opposite of that. It's called poser. Okay. All right, guys. Later. Enjoy your weekend. Later. And be excellent to each other.